Okay, we have 174 students now. So let's start the class. Okay, so this is what we were discussing on Tuesday. Uh, let's understand this with few examples first, those who are very new to this object-oriented programming thing, okay? So in object-oriented programming, we create classes, okay? And classes are blueprints. So let's say if I say, I'm just giving some simple examples which are there like in a lot of books and blogs you might see. So if I say car, okay, I will create a car class, and then every car will have few attributes, okay, and few methods. Now, what are these attributes? As in like a car will have 4 wheels, maybe one steering, clutch, uh, brake and accelerator. All those things are some of the attributes of the car, which will define, okay, if these things are present, then I will call it a car. Also, the car will have some methods. Car can perform some actions. Car will be able to speed. Car will be able to like you will be able to drive the car. So these are some of the methods, some of the actions that car can perform. From these are blueprints, okay? From these blueprints, you will create some object, some real thing, okay? As in like car is a class, but maybe some type of car, maybe Hyundai car or something, let's say Verna, okay? This is derived from car, like it has all the attributes and features of car, and maybe it will have some additional things. Maybe it will have some more safety features or some additional attributes or some additional methods. But some of the common attributes and methods which defines a car will be there in Verna for sure. And this is your object, like you create from this car class. Okay, so in object-oriented programming, you create classes which are like your blueprint, and then from those blueprint, you create objects. Okay, so when I was discussing this object-oriented programming, for to create this car class, what you will need to do, like I created a car class, then this def init function, for sure you have to add to initialize all the parameters. Like whenever you are creating the object, you will need to initialize some of the parameters, as in like some of the attributes you need to initialize, assign it to that object that you are going to create. So whenever like you create, how do you create an object from this class? You will say C1 equals to circle, and then you will pass all the parameters 3, 2, 1, let's say. So the moment you call this, this def init function gets called. Okay, now what you can think of this def init function, it will create an object in the space, and then which will be called to the outside world, it will be called as C1. Inside this class, this will be referred as self. Okay, and in this def init function, you are initializing the attributes, as in you are saying self.x, that is, to this self assign a attribute x, and to this x assign a value of whatever like you are getting from here, 3. Similarly, assign an attribute y to this self, and then assign a value of 2. Assign an attribute r, and to this assign a value of 1. Okay, and also some of the functions are there in this class. So these functions will not get called, but will be attached to this object, as in like area will be attached to this object, and perimeter will be attached to this object. So when you create an object this way, this is what is happening inside. Clear now? Is it clear now? Make sure that always when you have a circle, which is like whenever you have a class and this class is taking some parameters, as in like you have some attributes for that class, then you use this def init function to initialize all those attributes. and whatever other functions which are there in the class that you can define within the class, and all of that will be part of that object. Whenever you create an object, all these attributes and all these methods will be available in the object. Is this clear now? Yes, no, any questions?
Sir, can you explain the function of self?
That is what I'm saying. Self is a name. It is not, you don't think of it as a function or anything. You think it this way. Whenever you call this, whenever you try to create an object, this is how you create an object. This is how you create an object, right? So whenever you create an object, to the outside world, this object name is C1. You agree to this? From some environment,
Yes, sir.
when you create the object, the name of that object is C1. You will always refer that object as C1. Now this circle, like when you say C1 equals to circle 321, this class will get called, and to this class internally, this is the object name self. Internally within the class, the object will be referred as self. That is what you can think of. Okay, and in this init function, whatever you have, like you have the attributes, parameters x, y, and r. So when you call this one, when you invoke this, when this line of code get executed, this one is getting executed, what will happen? In def init, it will see self.x. Because this is self, now you are saying assign a attribute x to this self. And what value to assign? This value is coming from here. And this value is coming from this 3. So assign a value of 3. Similarly, for y, assign a value of 2. For r, assign a value of 1.
Sir, and init function, why we are taking double underscore?
These are like special keywords you can think of. This is not under your control.
Okay, sir.
You just, for now,
Sir,
you think these are special keywords, and this is how you will initialize your attributes of the class. Yes, there was some questions, I believe.
Sir, in place of integer, if I want to take string value, then how can I take?
Here you want to take some string value.
Yes, sir.
That is also possible. You can do that. Not a problem. You can take any values. I told you, like, it is a dynamically, Python is a dynamically typed language. Whatever value data type you are assigning to self dot attribute name, automatically that value will get assigned. There will not be any problem. This code is not specific to integral values. You just try that. It's possible. Okay, try with some dummy test classes or something. It will work for you. Or maybe I will show somewhere.
Okay, sir.
But is it clear like how this self is working? For now, if you're not able to thoroughly understand that or understand this, just make sure that whenever your class, whenever your object, when you create an object is taking some attributes, always have this def init. Once you start coding, it will automatically start making sense to you. It will take some time, but it will start making sense to you. Okay, but for now, this is what you can think of. Like def init is the piece of code which is responsible to attach all the attributes to this object, to this particular object. Okay, and initialize those attributes with some values. Because like if you have an object, you have some attributes and all these are null, then it doesn't make sense. There is no point in that. So it is responsible for initializing these attributes, attaching these attributes and initializing these attributes. That is what you can think of for now. Now what I will do, like once I have created this class, let's go ahead and create some objects. Okay, so I have created this class, and how I will be creating an object, I will say C1 equals to circle, and let's take some attributes 3, 2, 1. Okay, right? And let's add some print statements. Let's say I add print 1 here, print 2 here, just to let's show you the flow. Okay, nothing specific. Print 3 here, print 4, and print 5. So what will be the output if I run this particular cell?
2, 3.
2 and 3.
So print 1 is getting printed, that is for sure, because I'm just defining the class. This is the first line of executable and nothing else will get executed, but anything outside of these functions will get called or get executed. Correct? No issues with this, right? With print 1, the one which is getting printed, you do not have any questions, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now if I run this, what will get printed? It will print 2 and 3. Why? Because I'm creating an object, and the moment I create an object, this particular function will get called. So that's why 2 and 3 is getting printed. But these functions are getting attached to the object. These functions are getting attached to the object, but are not invoked. They are just attached to it. Okay, so that's why the output is 2 and 3. No questions. I'll remove all these print statements, and now I will say C1 equals to circle of 3, 2, 1. Okay, and I say C1 dot area. This is how I will invoke the function, right? So C1 dot area, when I'm saying C1, and if you see here, what parameter area is taking, it is taking self. So whenever I'm saying C1, automatically self will be a parameter to this function. You need not specify anything over here. There is no need to specify anything in this parameter. C1, see the C1 dot area self is automatically a parameter to this function call. C1 is my object, right? And I'm calling this function on top of that object. Internally, that object name is self. So I am aware of self. I don't have to specify or mention it explicitly. That is what I mean. Okay, so this is how I can invoke the area function. I'm saying,
again, sir.
yes, I'm explaining. Okay, so this is how I create an object. And then to this object, I have area and perimeter functions attached to it. Now, if I want to call the area function, I will be saying C1 dot area. Okay, I am not passing any parameter over here. In this brackets, I'm not passing any parameter. If you see here, area takes one parameter, that is self. But this area is attached to the circle object, and the circle object that I have created is C1, and I'm saying C1 dot area, so that self is automatically available to that area function. I need not explicitly mention that within this bracket. So this is the syntax. This is the way of writing the things. Okay, so you can directly say C1 dot area and it will work for you. Now, if you want to access the attributes, this is how you will be accessing the functions. Now, if you want to access the attributes, you can say C1 dot R. I will just work with radius, but whatever I'm doing with radius, same is applicable for the other two attributes that we have, that is X and Y. So to keep it simple, I will just work on radius. So if I say print C1 dot R, what will be the output for me?
1.
1.
1. Everyone agrees to this? Everyone agrees to this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, now, if I say C1 dot R equals to 2, this will reset the value of R that I had created with this object. So C1 dot R equals to 2 is going to update the value of radius. So here you created an object with radius 1. This line of code is going to update that value. Okay, so to access the value, you are saying C1 dot R. To update the value, you are saying C1 dot R equals to something, right? This is how. So normally when I say A equals to 5, okay, this is what I'm setting the variable A with a value of 5. Now to access the value of A, what I say A, and I'm able to access the value of A, right? or like in your ideally you might be doing print of a, correct? So to access the value here, I'm saying c1.r. To set the value, I'm saying c1.r equals to 2. So this is going to update the value of r for me. Is this clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, this is what something I don't want. I don't want to have a direct access of these attributes to the users. I want there should be some control to this. I want there should be some control to this. I want that unless and until you have some kind of authorization, you should not be able to access these values. So let's say to these functions, let me just copy paste this whole thing again. To these functions, I can add some validations here, and all those validations and authentication I am for now representing with a print statement. Let's say print area call authenticated. Okay. And similarly, I'm saying perimeter call authenticated. So you can think of this perimeter as some logic which is doing some kind of authentication. And once you are authenticated, then only it will execute rest of the code. So in these functions, area and perimeter, you can add those authentications. Okay. Now if I run this, and say C1 equals to circle 321 and C1 dot area. Now if I run this, so first authentication is happening and then calculation, and then it is giving us the result. If for some reason this authentication fails, you will not be able to call the area function. Okay, so here you can add your authentication. Here you can add some simple logic to authenticate whether the user is allowed to access these functions or not. Okay, so on similar lines, I want to control the access of the attributes in my class. You're getting my point? So the way I was doing this, C1 dot R, the user should not have access to this radius. For let's say the user should not have access to this radius attribute without authentication. So how I can do that? So for that, we have getter and setter methods. Okay, where you may be able to write some additional logic so that user may not be able to access the variables or the attributes this way, or maybe not be able to update the attributes in this style or in this fashion. So to do that, what you can do is, let me copy this again. And what I will do is, I will, instead of, okay, I'm just working on radius, but same thing is applicable for other variables and attributes also. But to keep it simple, I will just work on this radius thing. So what I will do here is, I will create some one more function, def get r. Okay, and here self, and I can simply say return self dot r, and one more function, def set r self, and it will take one more parameter because I'm setting the value. So I will take one more parameter r, and here I will say self dot r equals to r. And now here I'm going to say set r self dot set r, and I will give the value r over here. Now what will happen? The user will be able to add some additional logic here, and if he or she is authenticated, then only he will be able to access the radius. But for now, the user will be able to access this way also. C1 dot r equals to, sorry, if I run this, create an object, C1 equals to circle 321 and C1 dot R. So still I'm able to access, right? So what I will need to do is I will also need to make these attributes or these variables private. Okay, so this style of variable access is not allowed. Let me take one simple example. Okay, I will take one simple example and then I will come back to this problem. So class test, and I'm saying def init. Okay. To make the attributes private, you give a double underscore a double equals to a. Let me explain this with this example def, and I'm giving one simple function f1 self. Okay. So this is my simple example here. If I run this and let's create an object a1 t1 equals to test, and it will take one parameter. Let me give the value as 1. I ran this. Okay. Now if I say t1 dot a, what will be the output for me?
It should be 1.
It should be 1, right? But if I run this, it is giving me error. Why? Because with this double underscore, I have made this variable as private. You cannot access this. You're getting my point?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I'm saying all this while when I was creating attributes and I was assigning values to it, I was initializing those variables and parameters. All this while I was creating in a way so that it is accessible in this style. But I want to control this. I don't want the users to access the variables or the attributes in this way. I want to have it in functions so that I want this whole assignment and everything in functions so that I have full control, that I can add some additional logic, some additional authentication in the code. And if the user is authenticated, then only he will be having access to those attributes to either read or to write. To do that, I made those attributes private here. So with a double underscore, you can make any attribute private. Now, if you see this t1 equal to test1, and if you try to access t1.a directly, you will get an error because a is private here because of this double underscore. Now you will say, why don't you do double underscore? Let me do double underscore also, because you will think that, okay, the attribute name is double underscore here, and then I am doing just a, that's why it was failing. So let's do double underscore. Let's see what's happening. Still you are getting an error.
Sir, can you explain the line number 22?
Line number 22. Okay, what you want, I mean, what you have not understood here.
That private one, that self dot double underscore equal to a, that line.
All I'm trying to say here is, all this while what you did, you have written your code this way, correct? You have written your code in this style, correct? Now if I run this, I will be able to access the value of a in this style. I'm able to do that.
Yes, sir.
Now I'm making this double underscore. Okay, that means I'm making this variable or attribute private. Now if I run this, I will not be able to access. To the outside world, this is private. Internally, within the class, they know this variable, but outside world doesn't know about this variable. When you add this double underscore, outside world is not knowing about these variables. These variables are masked from masked from outside world. Now I'm not able to access these variables. Even if I add double underscore here, still I won't be able to access it because it is private. That is how this double underscore works in Python. It makes this variable private. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now coming back to our original problem here, what I will do is I will, So now to access these variables, let's say I told you that we cannot access it, but within the code, we will have to access these attributes because anyways, we will be working on those attributes only. All our computation, all our logic will be built on top of those attributes. So within the class, we should have access to these variables, correct? So here, let's say this is my get function. And this is another function def set self a. Okay, and here I will say the same line of code this. Now if I run this, to get the value of a, I can say t1 dot get. Now I'm able to access the values, right? And here you can add more authentication. Print additional authentication. More logic you can add, which I'm just representing with a print statement. Now if I do get, sorry, I will need to invoke this. Now if I do get, first the user will get authenticated and then the logic will get executed. Similarly, to set the value, what you can do is you can say t1 dot set, and then here you can pass the value. Let's say I'm giving 2, and if I run this, and now if I do t1 dot get, what will be the output for me?
2.
2. So 2. Now I'm able to access and set the value. This is the importance of getter and setter method. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now coming back to our circle problem again, let's do that whole thing. So I will just do that for radius. You can do for other attributes. So what I'm doing here, I will make these attributes private. Let's make these attributes private. Now if I run this, I will not be able to invoke this because now radius is private for me. So c1.r will not work for me. To access the radius value, I will say c1 dot get r. Now I will be able to access. To set the value, I will say c1 dot set r, and then I will pass some value. And when I say c1 dot get r, now the radius is changed. So this is the importance of your getter and setter method. I hope there is no questions now. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in Tuesday's class, we also towards the end we discussed like there are some issues with this style of writing code because I'm allowed to use I'm allowed to use this style of programming. And suddenly if I started using getter and setter, I made these attributes private and then I defined these functions, then my code is not backward compatible. And it will create a lot of issues for users who are using my code. We discussed this, right?
Yes, sir.
Correct? To make that backward compatible, how you will make this code backward compatible, now we will discuss another idea. So let me take this whole thing again. Okay. Now what I will do is forget about these functions. Okay. You have your attribute name R, right? So create functions with same attribute name. Instead of getter method get R, you create functions with same attribute name. Def R, and for this also set also you create the name with the function name with R. Okay. And here you say your original whatever code was there, self dot double underscore R equals to R. You just need to make this private. That's all. Okay, self double underscore R, and then with the same attribute name, create two functions, one for getting the values and the other one for setting the values. And then you do for getter, you write here at the rate of property. And here for setter, you write at the rate of R dot setter. Okay. These are in Python, these are called as decorators. Okay. These are called as decorators. And this is one of the important concept in Python where you can change the behavior of a function on the fly. I mean, there are few concepts related to it, but we will not be going in that detail. You can for now just understand, like for getter method, you will need to write add the property and then your function, and similarly add the attribute dot setter and your function to set the values. Okay, and the rest of the things will remain same. Now let's see what is happening. What we will do here is I will add one print statement. Print. Can you please guys keep yourself on mute? And here I will say okay. Now if I run this code and I create an object C1 equals to circle, what will be the output if I run this?
Inside setter.
Yes?
Inside setter.
Inside setter. Okay. If I run this, okay, did I run this one? This is circle, right? Okay, something is wrong. 1 second, let me just see. Class circle definite XYR. Yeah. Okay. So here you are making it private. Here, like the same style of coding, like initially whatever you have done, we started with this way, right? X, Y, and R, correct? We started this way. So we will keep everything on similar lines. We are not going to change anything here. Just within this class, we will create two more functions with the same attribute name. One will be getter and the other one will be setter. Now, why? So what was the mistake over here? I was saying double underscore. If I give double underscore, that is I'm making this attribute as private, then the user will not be able to access. But user was initially accessing these attributes saying C1.R, correct? I want the user to access these attributes with this style of code also, and C1.getR, whatever that functionality was there, right? So I want the user to access the code in this style, but whatever additional logic I was writing here will get invoked even if the user is using this style to code. You're getting my point. That is what my intention is. I want my user to have access to the attributes by this style of coding, but even if they use this style, my logic which I was writing within a function will get executed. That is my intention. Okay. So everything I will keep same. Here I will remove this double underscore. Everything will remain same. I will just create a getter method and a setter method. Now if I call this, it will print inside setter. So here it is setting the value, but it will, from here, it will go to this function call. And it will first, before assigning this value, it will run this function. Now let's see few more examples. So if I say C1 dot R, what will be the output?
Inside getter.
Inside getter and like whatever the R value is, that is 1. So two of the things will be printed. Inside getter 1. So see, I'm able to access the variables using the old style C1.R, but still it is implementing my logic over here. Like whatever additional authentication or logic that I wrote in a function, all that I'm able to execute with the same old style of coding. You're getting my point. Similarly, if I want to set the values, something this way, C1 dot R equals to 5, what will get executed? What will it print?
Inside setter.
Inside setter, right? And all of the things will remain same. C1 dot area, okay, C1 dot perimeter. Everything else will remain same. So now I have made my code backward compatible. Okay, so no need to have some additional functions like getter and setter kind of things, because it is an extra overhead for the developers also, and also for the users. They need to remember what is that getter and setter function names. Now they don't have to remember all these things, because anyways they will be doing C1.R and C1.R equals to some value to get and set the value to access and update the attribute values. Does this make sense? Are you able to understand?
Yes, sir.
Everyone?
Yes.
Sir, if we are again able to update the values, then why we used that private thing?
Good question. That is what I was thinking, why this is not coming. Okay, good question. But you are able to access the values, you are able to set the values. The only difference here is you are able to access only after doing some sort of validation. Here, like this print statement, you think of this something as login validation for you, which was not there initially. In your initial code, there was no authentication, there was no validation when you try to access these attributes. But here, every time you try to access, this function will get called where you can add additional validation. This function will get called where you can add additional validation. That is the difference. Now let me show the difference with some real use case here. Okay. Okay, I created the circle with radius 1. On the fly through some hack, what I'm saying is C1 dot R equals to -3. Negative radius is not possible, but I'm saying -3. And then I am saying C1 dot area. It calculated the area with even -3 because pi r square, right? R square, negative will become positive. That's why I'm getting a positive value, which is not correct, right? Because I'm not doing any validation. I'm not able to do any validation. But while here, I can write those additional validations. Before setting, let's say I can say assert. What was that? R greater than 0. Else print radius can't be less than or whatever. Okay, this statement is not correct, but let it be. Radius can't be less than 0. Okay, even radius can't be 0, but let it be. Radius can't be 0. Okay. Now if I run this, and let's say through some hack, I'm saying C1 dot R equals to -3. This will fail. I'm able to add those additional validations. Even now you will have a question. Now you will have a question. Sir, same thing I can add here as well, right? In area also. I can add here assert self.r greater than 0, something that way I can do. But the real challenge here is, while creating the object also, -3, okay, sorry, -3, it is creating an object with a negative radius. So intuitively, can you think, well, because we are doing object-oriented programming, so we are trying to mimic the things which you see in the world. So can you have a negative radius for a circle? No, right? We
Yes,
cannot
sir.
have negative radius, correct? But here what you are saying, you are creating an object with negative radius. Although in the functions you can add additional logic, additional validations, but still you are creating an object with negative radius. That should not be allowed. And here, if I try to create a circle with negative radius, even that is going to fail. Why? Because the moment it hits this line, this particular line, it will go to this setter and implement and call those additional validation logic that you have written. You can try this out. So this is going to fail. Radius can't be less than 0. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So now on similar lines, you will need to solve the assignment problem for today. Okay. Make sure you try all the 3 approaches that I discussed. First approach was this. Just it will help you to practice these things. So this is your basic approach, or the first approach. Then you create some functions like getter and setter method, getter r and set r, and then finally you do this backward compatible using these decorators. Okay, that is the intention. So there are 2 problems for today: circle and triangle problem. Again, these problems are unbounded, as in like we might not be able to give you the exact text because we are not expecting some exact output from your code. Whatever you can think of in object-oriented style, as in what all features, what all validations, what all exceptions you should be having in your code, try to add everything in your code. Okay, so first there is one question from Justin. Sir, what all methods do we have to include other than area and perimeter for both circle and triangle? So whatever we had discussed, right? That distance of origin from distance of center of the circle from the origin, and the minimum distance of circumference from the origin. That capital D and small d, both you can include. Similarly in triangle, all the functions depending on your type of triangle, I mean classify the triangle, and some of the things that we have already done in our assignment, try to implement in object-oriented programming. Okay. Then there is a question from Subhajyoti: why add the property was in the error statement is only associated with setting the value, right? Where have I used in error statement?
Assertion error. So in the
Here?
output, sir. It's line number 7.
So these are like all the stack of your code. This is not your error statement. Your error statement is assertion error. This is just your code trace. Don't worry about it. Okay. This is your error, assertion error. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Does the double underscore? Okay, this we have already discussed. Okay, cool. Okay. So now at least you have some basic idea how to write classes and how to initialize the attributes in the class, and how to write functions in the class, and how to invoke them. Okay. Now let's extend this little bit. There are some principles and paradigms of object-oriented programming which will make your development more easy, and we will see some of the benefits. We will see some of the benefits through one simple example actually. But to To explain the things some of the concepts little bit more, let me take the same example. Okay, so there are some principles and paradigms of object-oriented programming. One is called as abstraction. Okay, then we have something called as encapsulation. I will just write some of the keywords which are there. Polymorphism, and there is one more, inheritance. Okay, so these are some of the keywords which you will see in object-oriented programming: abstractions, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. Okay, now let's first discuss theoretically what these terms mean. Okay, abstractions, so first I will be taking this encapsulation. Okay, encapsulation, all this while we have been discussing encapsulation. Okay, whenever you bundle or package all the related things together, or something which are kind of having some kind of relationship, or they can be packaged together, when you are encapsulating it, that is encapsulation. Okay, so all this while, although like encapsulation term is coming in your object-oriented programming, but all this while you have been like when you wrote functions, that was encapsulation. Okay, when you defragment your code and keep all the related things together, and fragmenting your code and making it like more modular that way, that is also encapsulation. So there is nothing much to discuss there in encapsulation. It is more like all this while you have been doing encapsulation, and this is the something, a good programming style, because when you keep all the related things together, it will be easier for you to debug. For example, let's say when I'm writing code, let's say I'm creating some application for banks, and I have different modules, as in like I have some saving account, some current account, and home loan and car loans. This way, all the related code which is related to saving account, I'm keeping in some directory structure, some folder. And similarly, this is how I'm keeping my code modular, or I have fragmented my code. Okay, now if there is some issue in savings account, I know that exactly where I have to go and search for the code. Just imagine everything was in just one big monolithic file. It would have been very difficult for us to debug, because everything is in one file, one folder structure, one directory structure. It will be very difficult for you to debug the code that way. Okay, so it's always better to fragment your code and encapsulate the related things which are there. That is your encapsulation. Okay, no questions? Good
No, sir.
definition of abstraction, like it is kind of the outer structure or the outer interface that you are showing to the world. For example, let's say I'm using this ATM machine. Okay, for example, to use a ATM machine, all I need to know is that I will need to go to that ATM machine, take out my card, swipe my card, select saving account, enter my PIN number, enter the amount I will want to withdraw, and that's it. And collect my card, collect the money, and I can go back home, right? That is all I need to know as an user. But there are a lot of things that are happening in the backend, right? Maybe I have my account in SBI, I'm withdrawing money from ICICI ATM. It is possible, right? Interoperability is possible in ATMs and everything. How the transaction is happening, how the amount is getting deducted from my account, how SBI is telling ICICI that this particular user, or now how ICICI is telling SBI that this particular user has withdrawn this much amount from so and so account. So please, because this guy is not our customer, it is your customer, deduct from his account and give me this much commission or something. Some rule, some logic will be there. But do we know about all those things? Or are we concerned about all those things? No, right? All we need to know is high level how the functionality is working. Correct? Right?
Yes, sir.
That is abstraction. That is abstraction. But in development world, there is some additional, I mean, although this is something how you can think of, but let me give you some other way of thinking of this abstraction. Okay, what I'm saying is, let's say I am your lead developer, or I'm your tech lead or lead module lead or something. From somewhere I gathered this requirement that I will need to create a class of circle, rectangle, and those kind of things. Okay, or basically a class of shapes, different two-dimensional shapes. Okay, and I know that every two-dimensional shape will have a function called as area. And yeah, so I was saying, like, as a module lead, I got some requirement to create some functionality for shapes. And I know that any two-dimensional shape that you create, whether it is a circle, whether it is a rectangle, whether it is a triangle, or your some other kind of two-dimensional shape, every shape will have a area and perimeter. Every shape will have area and perimeter. That I'm sure. Some of the shape will have some additional functionalities. They might have some additional functionalities, but for sure they will have this area and perimeter. Everyone agrees to this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now what I will do as a module lead, I will create a class shape. And this shape class, I will add some functionalities which I think is or will be required in every other class, like different class that you create. Either you create for circle, or you for triangle, or for rectangle. Whatever you create, every class must have area functionality and perimeter functionality. So what I will do is I will create a class shape, and then I will create def area and def perimeter. So this is my abstract class. We will discuss how to create abstract methods. So these are your abstract method, as in, like, I will not give any definition here. I will just say pass. That is, I will just create the structure. I will just create the structure, but I will not give the exact implementation of this code. You're getting my point? I'm just giving you a structure, boss. Any shape will have these two functionalities, but no implementation. All I'm saying is pass. And we will see how to code this, but all I'm saying here is I will give the function, I will give the structure, but no implementation, just pass. That's it. And as a developer, what you will do, let's say one of you is creating circle class. So you will create class circle, and you will inherit from this class shape. I will talk about inheritance also. And whatever functions that I have created here that are abstract or no implementation, you will have to implement those functions here. If you miss to implement any of these functions, you will not be able to create an object of this circle class. And that's the beauty of your abstract method. What all I'm saying is, whenever there is a abstract superclass or something, all the functionalities which are there in that abstract class or all the abstract functionalities in that abstract class must be implemented in the child classes. So I'm enforcing all my developers to implement some of the core functionalities. I will tell them, boss, you add some additional functionalities. I'm not worried about that. But these are the core functionalities that any shape class must have. And that I can do through use of abstraction and inheritance. Don't you think this is something very important in development software industries?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So you can do this, you can invoke this. Otherwise, what will happen? Let's say one developer is creating circle class and he is giving the name as circle area. He can give any name, right? He can give circle area. And another developer who is developing rectangle class, he can give rectangle area name. Now, will it not be difficult for the users who are using my code? Here he has to remember circle area as the function name. Here he has to remember rectangle area as the function name. Instead of that, I will have just one function area and just different implementation. At the runtime, like when you create the object, there will be different implementation. Are you able to understand some of the things at least? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Everyone? Because after this, we are going to discuss, we will be doing one very interesting problem actually, okay? So if you
So
have
can you explain once again?
Okay. So all I'm saying is, okay, hold on. Let me show this through some examples, okay? Let me show this through some examples. What I will do is, so whatever I was discussing as of now, I will be doing that through some examples. So this is what I will do. First, to create an abstract class, this is what you need to do from ABC. All the time you can do this. From ABC, import ABC, comma, abstract method. Yeah. Okay. Now create a class shape. Okay. And inherit ABC. So to inherit from any class, any parent class, forget about that inheritance. I will explain in more detail. But when you want some of the functions to be abstract without any implementation in a class, you will have to inherit from, you have to write something this way from ABC. ABC is your abstract base class. Okay, so done. Now I will create all the functions which I think are there. So I will say at the rate of abstract method, again decorator, abstract method, and then I will say def area self, no attributes, nothing I'm taking, and simply I'm saying pass. Okay. Similarly, at the rate of abstract method, def perimeter self and pass. No implementation, right? No implementation. This is developed by your tech lead. Just assume now as a developer, you are creating a shape class, developer 1. So what you are doing, you are creating a circle class. So class circle, and then you will inherit from this shape, as in like you are saying this circle is of type shape. You can think of this way. So this circle is of type shape. So when you do shape as a developer, whenever you do this shape, and here let's say I created some own function of mine, def test, okay, print 1. I did this. Now if I want to create an object of circle, C1 equals to circle, This will fail. See the error? Can't instantiate abstract class with abstract method area and perimeter. Why? Because I'm saying circle is of type shape. Circle is of type shape, and shape is an abstract class with few abstract methods. And if these methods are abstract, as in there is no implementation to it, you must implement in the class which is inheriting this abstract class. Okay, let's take this simple example. Again, a sad example, but let me take this. Maybe let's say maybe for example, my parents took some loan. Okay, my parents took some loan and they are not able to repay it. As a child, I am responsible to repay that loan. Correct? So some of the functionalities which is not implemented in this parent class, or which is abstract, which is not implemented, which is not concrete, as a child, I am responsible to implement those things. You're getting my point?
Yes, sir.
Right. So in this class, if something was not implemented, if I'm saying this is of type shape, then this circle class is responsible to implement these two functionalities. Otherwise, you will not be able to create an object. When you say object, all this while I have been saying, whenever I'm saying object, I'm saying this is something real. This is something real. This is something concrete. So if something is real, how you can have something abstract there? You cannot, right? If something is real, everything in that should be real. Nothing can be abstract. Nothing can be without definition. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now what I will do is in this class, let me add few more functionality. Def, area, and here I will give self and print circle area. Okay, and similarly I will say def perimeter, self print circle perimeter. Okay, now if I create this, I will be able to do that. And when I say c1 dot area, circle area, and c1 dot perimeter, what happened? I will be able to call perimeter. And even I will be able to invoke test, which is specific to my class circle, c1 dot test. I can call test as well. So these are the functionalities that I implemented for the parent class, and I'm bound to implement that. That is also you need to understand. You are not just implementing, you are bound to implement that. We saw that if we do not implement, that will fail. You're getting my point. In some of the case, you may implement, you may not implement. I will give those examples, but here you are bound to implement. If it is an abstract method in the parent class, you are bound to implement that. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
This is your abstract method. Now let's create another method here. Def, same method, test, or maybe Amit, some method Amit, and I will say this is a implementation. You can think of this as a class. This is abstract base class. As in when we were discussing exception, what we were discussing when you have to create custom exceptions, you will inherit from base exception, right? When you create custom exception class, you will inherit from base exception. Similarly, if you want to make a class Like some of the functionalities within the class as abstract, you will have to inherit from ABC class. You just remember that for now. That is the syntax, correct. Okay. Okay. Now, what I will do, I'm adding another function over here, def Amit self, and then I'm saying print Amit. Okay. And I run this. Okay. Now, here I can def Amit self print new Amit something. Okay. And when I say C1, okay, let me first create this. C1 dot Amit, new Amit. So what I'm, okay, let me just delete all of this, then it will be more clear. So what I am trying to say here is C1 equals to circle. So what I'm trying to say here is, see, one function, so these two are functions I created in my class, which are abstract, okay? So I am bound to implement these functions in my child class. I'm bound to implement, but there are some of the functions which are there in that class, and the child class will have access to these functions and can even override these functions. Okay. Now, if I create a function Amit here, and let's say for now I have commented this out, and so Amit is there in my parent class, but not there in my child class. But still I will be able to access C1 dot Amit. So C1 dot Amit as in will be calling this function, which is there in the parent class. I will give you a very interesting example for this. And I got this example, like I was taking some interview some long time back, and one boy gave me that example, and I find that example really interesting. So I will share that example with you to understand it more, okay? But this is what, like if there is something which is there in the parent class will be accessible in the child class, will be available in the child class, okay? You also have an option to override this functionality, like you can override, and now if I run this, it will be new Amit. So same name, but I'm overriding. So initially we discussed something called as overloading. Here we are discussing something called as overriding. I'm overriding the functionality. Okay. To understand, let's take this example, and all this while whatever I'm doing here is called as inheritance. I'm inheriting from the parent class. So there is a question from Subrojyoti, like, can we have a function definition inside an abstract class?
Sir, I got it.
We have,
Sir, got it.
we have already, yes, we have already discussed that. Yeah. Okay. So let me take that example. Okay. So this is how inheritance works, and some of the concepts are all covered in this example as such. So let's say you have a parent class. You have a parent class and you have child class. It's exactly similar to how inheritance works in Indian society. Okay, exactly similar. So you have parent class, parent will have some property. Okay, all these properties of the parents will be inherited by the child. And this is how we show inheritance with upward arrow, like the child to parent, it will point that way. So all the property of the parent will be inherited by the child, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And similarly, some of the child may have some property, some child property, like the parent property and the child property. But normally in Indian society, how it happens, I mean, this is parent property will be inherited by child, but child property may or may not be inherited by the child. Even by the law also, like all the property, you have rights on your parent property, but child property, you may or may not have the rights, correct? That is how it works, correct? So all the functions and all the methods which you are seeing here in the parent class will be directly inherited by the child class. That is what I'm trying to say here. So when I am not overriding it, when this function was commented, I was still able to access this function because I'm inheriting from the parent class. Okay, and when I'm trying to override, so this was the example. So let's say there is a method called as marry in my parent class. So the parents decided like, okay, the child is going to marry so and so girl. Okay, child class can override that functionality. Child class can say, okay, I'm not going to marry this girl, I will marry someone else. Overriding, you're getting my point? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
So that was your overriding concept. So as in, like, there is a functionality already there in the parent class. The parent has defined some functionality that marry. My child is going to marry girl X, but the child is saying, no, I will marry girl Y. Overriding the functionality of the parent class. So some of the things they are inheriting by default, and some of the things they can override. That is how inheritance works. Exactly the same way how it works in Indian society, it will work in your class object-oriented programming. So this is your inheritance concept. And this is evident from this example also, right? Like if you see here, when I commented out this Amit, this functionality, I was able to access function from this. It was printing Amit, and then I overwrote it. And when I was calling this Amit again, now it is giving me new Amit. I overwrote that functionality. Correct? Everyone agrees? Everyone understood this? Whatever
Yes,
I'm
sir.
saying here? Yes. Now, again, you can create one more class. Maybe you can create a rectangle class. So here you can say rectangle. Again, it will be child of shape. It can have some function of its own. Area, same method name, same method, because even rectangle class is inheriting from the abstract class shape. Then the rectangle class must implement these two methods. That we already know, right?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, in place of if we write circle, then it will access the both class, shape and circle both.
If in good
In
point,
class rectangle.
good point. Yes, yes, you are right. It will inherit, like in hierarchy, it is going to inherit that way. We will discuss about those things. There are few things there. I mean, there are some subtle differences. I believe that you are more pointing towards what is that, multiple inheritance and not multiple inheritance kind of thing or something, or, but you are right, it will, the hierarchy will be maintained. Okay, it will inherit from both the classes. Yes, we will discuss. So multiple inheritance in some of the programming languages, it is not possible. In Python, it is possible, but it is, I don't feel that it is a good way. And we will discuss one scenario related to that in future class. But don't worry about that. Let's focus here first. So in rectangle, you must implement this area and perimeter function, that we know for sure. We can override some of the functionalities, or maybe we can add some of the functionalities in rectangle class, that also we know. Okay, rectangle. And now if I run this, and when I say, when I create an object of rectangle, R1 equals to a rectangle, something this way. And here also I was saying R1 dot area. So same function name, but because we have a different object, even the same function name is invoking a different method, right? This is you can think of as polymorphism for the sake now. Polymorphism is polymorphism, as in like different forms which you can see, which is possible in object-oriented programming. So basic idea, like all the principles and paradigms are related and in and around this thing: abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and your polymorphism. So through it is better to understand these examples or these principles and paradigms through examples. Okay, so whatever we have discussed, so what you can do now is, the assignment problem, I have given two questions there. One is for circle, the other one is for triangle. Assume that you solve those problems, separate problems, and then maybe you can create a shape class and then try to inherit from those shape class, make abstract, and then create circle, and then create triangle class separately, and then use that. That is also, so just for the practice purpose, you can do that. Okay. No questions so far?
No, sir.
Okay. Now I'm going to discuss, I will end the class in 5-10 minutes, but before that, I will be giving you one problem that will be an assignment for tomorrow, but briefly I will be discussing that. I'm not going to give a solution yet, but we will be discussing that more in detail tomorrow. You will need to come up with some solutions, okay? Or just think through it, how you will be doing, okay? Do you guys play Clash of Clans or any such games?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Okay, so this is the problem. So in Clash of Clan or some of the games like that, what is there? You have some set of armies, right? You have some set of soldiers. Maybe you will have, what is there? You will have swordman, okay?
Dragon.
Some archer,
Prince.
yeah, whatever you can think of. Dragon, your maybe Iron Man, your He-Man, or whatever.
Barbarian.
Yeah, whatever. Good. Okay. So there are some soldiers. We will just mimic a simple game of Clash of Clan, okay, through object-oriented programming. So what you need to do is, you will be creating different kinds of soldiers, different types of soldiers, okay? And all the soldiers will have two functionalities for sure. If these two functionalities are not there, then I will not call them as soldiers. They will be soldiers only if they can attack. Okay, so there will be a functionality called as attack, and when I call that function attack, the soldiers will be attacking. That is one functionality. And second functionality is to maybe what you say, gather. Okay, so two functionality, attack and gather. So when I call this gather function on, let's say, swordman, I'm calling this gather function. All the swordman will gather together. And when I say attack, the swordman will attack. So we are going to mimic a very simple form of this shot, but the whole idea is to understand how to apply all these concepts that we have discussed so far in this object, where to apply abstract method, where to apply inheritance, polymorphism, all those things we will be discussing, but you just think through how you can implement this game. So you will have different kind of soldiers. All these soldiers will implement two functionalities for sure, that is attack and gather, and some of the functionalities will be soldier specific. How you can implement this or mimic this game such that you are doing code reuse, as in like you have written the code once, you are reusing the code. All these things you need to think through. You are doing code reuse. Your code is like in object oriented style, OOP style, okay? and your code is extensible. I mean, you can easily make changes there. Okay, it's extensible. You can easily make changes. Like, it should be very flexible. Your code should be very flexible. Tomorrow, if there is a requirement change, you are easily able to accommodate that change. That should be the main idea. Otherwise, there is no point of using object-oriented programming. Okay, so your code should be extensible such that whenever there is a requirement change, you can very easily adapt to that change. You can implement those changes very easily. Okay, all those things you will need to think through, and this will be your assignment for tomorrow's tomorrow, and we will be discussing this problem in detail. We will be doing a lot of interactive session tomorrow, and we'll discuss this problem. Okay, and meanwhile, again, I will ask you guys to go through this entire recording, understand some of the principles and paradigms and some of the examples that we discussed, and also implement those circle and triangle problem. And whatever we have discussed, try to, like, whatever I have written on this Jupyter notebook, try to write and code in your development environment the same way. One or twice you will do, you will understand all the concepts. It's not some rocket science. You will be able to understand this. Okay, that's all for today. I think we can end the class if you guys don't have any further questions.